You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hello, this is Voss here from theChrisVossShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, the earliest things that makes official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show, the family that loves you. Doesn't judge you that harshly because you're here to learn, you're here to educate, you're here to learn and know more. And that's what makes you a better person than, for the most part, most people, because most people, they just don't care. They're busy watching The Bachelor, the Kardashians, or I don't know, they're looking at the wall and drooling out the side of their mouth. But the smart people are over here on the Chris Voss Show. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to dress you up, folks, as they would say in the old days. Sound like old time radio, didn't it, there for a second? We're trying to dress you up, but you bunking kids. Anyway, whatever. I don't know what I'm talking about. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss for your family, friends, and relatives, to LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, and all those crazy places. We are on the interwebs in the sky.
Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind.
Today we have an amazing young man on the show. We're going to be talking about his insights, his experience, etc., etc. Willie Handler joins us on the show. He's the author of an amazing book we're going to be talking to him about and some of his insights into that book. And so we can find out more about it. It is entitled Out of the Shadows, Growing Up with Holocaust Survivor Parents. And that came out October 26, 2024 by Willie Handler. Willie has reinvented himself on several occasions throughout his work career. He's been a hospital administrator, a government policy manager, an expert in insurance, and a consultant. Following his retirement from the government, Willie began a writing career. He's published 3 fictional novels over the last few years. His latest books include a memoir focusing on growing up as a child of Holocaust survivors. He's active in Toronto's Holocaust second generation and third generation survivor community, participating in educational programs, commemorative events, and group discussions. He's also a volunteer at Toronto Holocaust Museum, where he assists students and visitors as they make their way through the museum's gallery. He's spoken online and at person events or about the Holocaust and his family's experience. He's currently working on a book dealing with generational trauma in descendants of Holocaust survivors. Welcome to the show, Willie. How are you?
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you, Willie. Give us any .coms. Where can we find you on the interwebs?
I am not only do I have a website, I'm on Substack, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and all you have to do is search for Willie Handler.
WillieHandler.com. So, Willie, give us a 30,000 overview. What's in this book? Give us the details, if you will.
Okay, well, the book is sort of divided into 3 parts. The first part is my family's history, and part of the reason why I did that is I didn't know it, because my parents were like many Holocaust survivors who did not feel comfortable speaking about their experience during the war. And so I didn't know that much. So the first part was researching my family's history. The second part of the book, the largest part of the book, is like growing up with my parents. And then the last part talks about intergenerational trauma, sort of more broader community groups and anti-Semitism, more things that occur within the community.
There you go.
But it all really just ties together.
Yeah, ties together. And so were both your parents Holocaust survivors?
Yes, they were. My father he came from a small town in Poland, and my mother was from a tiny little village. I don't even think it exists anymore, in Romania.
Oh, wow. Now, what country was your father from?
Poland.
So Poland or Romania. And what was their experience during the war? So we can kind of get a foundation of what you ended up being raised in dealing with the fallout from that. Willie? Willie? It looks like you locked up on me, Willie, there.
I did.
I was asking you the question, what was your parents' experience? If you could give us a lowdown on that, of the experience during the war and the Holocaust.
Right. So my father, at the start of the war, was a young adult. He was in his 20s. He just got married, and he had 2 children. He was sent away at one point, probably in, I believe, about 1942. They were living in a ghetto in the town that they lived in, and he essentially went from one camp to another because he was used as slave labor, and ended up 7 different camps before the end of the war, and he was liberated. As far as his family, in the summer of 1942, his wife and 2 daughters, his parents, and other family members were shipped to Auschwitz, where they were killed.
Oh, wow. That is unfortunate.
Yeah. Now, as far as my mother goes, the war was very different in Romania than it was in Poland. And the Germans actually never invaded Romania, because the Romanian government, at least at the start of the war, was actually one of the Axis powers. So they were aligned with Germany. And so on their own, they started persecuting Jews. There was actually a pogrom in my mother's village, and every Jewish home was destroyed. So everybody was left homeless, and they were sent off to a larger town, where they were there for about a year, until the entire Jewish population was deported to a region in the Ukraine called Transnistria, that had been handed to Romania by the Germans. And there they were ghettoized in what was probably not anything better than any different than a concentration camp, other than the fact that there were no gas chambers. So many people died of disease, the elements, because they had no warm clothes, or starvation. And she had lost her 2 parents, but her and some of her siblings did survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what was it like for you to be raised? What was that environment like when it came to you being raised?
That it's an interesting question. When you're growing up, you think that your household is sort of normal, but it was far from it.
Yeah.
And as you grow up, you start to realize more and more how out of the ordinary it was. I mean, my parents were both very traumatized by their experience.
Yeah.
And in those days, they didn't even know what trauma was.
Yeah.
PTSD was not a label hung on people until after the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
And so they tried to they actually met after the war in Israel. They tried to, they basically they immigrated to Canada, and they began to sort of scrape together money. They worked and bought a home very early on, but they were really very much focused on your basic needs, which is food, clothing, shelter. When it came to emotional support, they weren't there. They really didn't have the greatest parenting skills. So I was kind of very much, you're left on your own. So there was no one to help me with homework. If you have a problem with a friend, no one to really talk to about it. If you want to play sports, you better sign yourself up and get yourself there, because that was not something within their realm of needs. And so you become relatively independent, but a little bit too much. Mm-hmm. And so I found myself, in fact, to be very much in survival mode. And also, as I learned, is that some of that trauma that he experienced was transferred over to me and to my siblings as well. And today we know that as intergenerational trauma.
Yeah. Fun is fun. And so how did that manifest itself in your experience?
Well, it's interesting. Because I grew up having to do everything for myself, I learned not to rely on people. So even today, I don't really know how to ask for help.
Oh, really?
And that's part of it. And I think I gained a lot of my father's sort of distrust of people, and I kind of did not develop very much in the way of close relationships with other people. I tended to push people away or have a wall around me. I wasn't one to display much in the way of emotions. I just held them all in. And it kind of really worked fine for me. I was very functional. I was very successful in my work career. And then I guess about 5 years ago, when I decided I was going to start working on my memoir, things for me started to change a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And how that happened is that, I started doing a lot of research, found some kind of shocking things, but in
what case do you find shocking?
Maybe the best example is I mentioned that my father had a wife and 2 kids, 2 daughters, and but growing up, he basically told us all, including my mother, as far as she knew, he had a wife and 1 daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime he was reminded of them or he talked about them, he would just start to cry. So when I did some research, I didn't have any clear sense of dates. So when he was married, when his daughter was born. So I got access to Polish archives and got marriage and birth records. And what I got was I got his marriage records, but what I got was birth records for 2 children. And so he had essentially buried the memory of his younger daughter. And I should say, when they perished, they were 27 months and 11 months. They were like virtually babies.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a huge shock for me and for the rest of the family. And I still don't completely understand it. And so that's like one of the shockers. I did not even know the name. I mean, he had 5 siblings, 3 of which actually survived, 2 perished. I did not know their names, and I had to, part of my research was finding out their names and how old they were, and so on, and stuff like that. And so but as I started to recall some of my childhood memories, because I really needed it, to work on the book. Not only did those memories come back, but all this trauma that I had been storing inside of me for decades just came all at once. Mm-hmm. And within a couple months, I basically had a breakdown and ended up in therapy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm still in therapy, but I have bounced back and moved on to work on another book. But that whole process was very transformational. And so I think at a certain point, I started reevaluating my whole life, my relationships with people, what I wanted to do the rest of my life. The name of the book, Out from the Shadows, is non-accidental.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a sort of it's a metaphor for my life, which was that I tended to not like to be in the spotlight and to be sort of back in the shadows, but also the whole the shadow of the Holocaust followed around my family, as it does for other Holocaust families.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to sort of escape from that. And so I decided, and at the same time, anti-Semitism around the world was exploding, and I decided that I needed to start speaking out more. And so not only am I writing another book that's Holocaust related, but as well, I'm speaking about the Holocaust, anti-Semitism, and very much speaking to other descendants of Holocaust survivors and helping them sort of cope with what's going on around us.
And that's really important. I mean, I would imagine, there was a lot of trauma that took place doing that, right? That can be really hard to deal with. And, they were dealing with it the best they could in any way they could. And that was just the issue that they had there, right?
Yeah. It's people, a lot of people are very much capable of bearing their trauma,
mm-hmm.
but it will come out from time to time. And as well, not only have I inherited all this trauma, but maybe to a lesser extent, I was also traumatized through my childhood by what I would say is, sometimes I had different labels for my parents. They were they were loving and nurturing, but they were also distant. And they did not necessarily integrate well into North American society. And so at times I labeled them useless and clueless, which is a little cruel, but it kind of very much reflected the fact is that I had to do things on my own because they did not have a good sense of what was the best. So, picking courses for school, I couldn't go to my parents. What do they know? They did not know. But
wow.
My parents were essentially illiterate.
Mm.
When your life is disrupted, when your life gets disrupted by something like World War II, it either delays or stops your development.
Yeah.
And as I spoke to and I should say for my next book, I interviewed over 100 descendants of Holocaust survivors, and what I found was they were experiencing very similar things, and that and their ability to cope and their parents' ability to cope really it sort of ended up being very broad spectrum, but there was nothing unique about my experience.
Yeah. It's and maybe you need to start a counseling service for survivors, because a lot of this transposes into generational trauma, correct?
Yeah. And in fact, it wasn't, I would say, this whole notion of intergenerational trauma was not recognized or understood. I don't think people realized it was happening until 25 years after the end of the war.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is because the children of Holocaust survivors their trauma was never really recognized.
Yeah.
And I should add the reason, and it's reflected in the title of my next book, which I'm still working on, it's The Hidden Victims.
Mm-hmm.
Because people don't realize that these people are, in many cases, as damaged as their parents. Wow. And what's happening now is they're all, I would say, they're from 50 to 78 years old, something like that. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of like the boomer generation, right?
Yeah.
And their children, the third generation, are also carrying intergenerational trauma. And so kind of part of my book will be, the new book will be on how to mitigate transferring that trauma from generation to generation to generation.
Mm-hmm. Transferring that generation and dealing with it and stuff. I mean, that's a really important point, that people have to take and deal with, et cetera, et cetera. So do you go around and speak and do different things, et cetera, et cetera. Is that correct?
Yeah. And so, I do virtual and in-person sort of talks, and sort of I'm very flexible. In fact, in the first week of November is in Toronto is Holocaust Education Week, and one of the programs I'm doing is a program with a friend of mine who used to be a white supremacist.
Wow.
And she left. She was only in for a very short time, and then she realized that she was making a huge mistake in her life, and so we're doing a program on Holocaust denial in the digital age. And it actually should be a very interesting program.
All right. That should be pretty cool.
I don't have information yet, but I will be posting it online on social media probably next week when the link is available, because it's going to be a virtual, sort of like a fireside chat.
A fireside chat.
With no fire.
With no fire.
Maybe a virtual fire. I'm not sure.
A virtual fire, as it were. So you got some chats coming up. Any future books you're working on you want to give details?
Well, right now it's the Hidden Victims that I'm going to be working on, and once this is done, and which will be sometime before the end of the year, I might just go back to fiction and give my body a rest, because this stuff is pretty stressful.
Yeah, pretty stressful, as it were. Pretty stressful. So as we go out, any more we need to talk about, plug or get to have people talking about?
I should mention that I'm on Substack. I write on a lot of topics that impact on my community and sort of like current events. For instance, I do stuff on anti-Semitism. I just published a piece on the ceasefire in the Middle East, and so if you look for Willie Handler on Substack, you will find me there, and you'll find some very interesting articles. And as well, my newsletter is there. So the best way to keep up with what I'm doing is to subscribe to my Substack account.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Well, thank you very much, Willie, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you. And thanks, Ron, for tuning in. Order up Willie's book wherever fine books are sold, and definitely take a look at what's going on in today's world, the anti-Semitism and stuff like that, and why these stories are important, that we don't relive the Holocaust and other horrible things that we've done to people around the world.
Yeah, no, and sort of one of the points is that Holocaust denial, which is my latest topic that I'm speaking on, is really very much a form of anti-Semitism, where by denying that the Holocaust existed, you take away the ability of Jewish people to claim they were ever victims.
Yeah.
And that's sort of very much a whole part of it. And it's all very much, it's just conspiracy based. And as we know, there are in social media now and on the internet, conspiracy theories are flying around like crazy.
Yeah. That's the fun part of the fun part, as it were. So folks, order up his book wherever fine books are sold. It's called Out of the Shadows: Growing Up with Holocaust Survivor Parents, out October 26, 2024. Thanks, Monis, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss, one of the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. That should have us out. Great show, Willie.